What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Ben Affleck film, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is directed by Zack Snyder, who previously directed the DC property Watchmen and of course directed Man of Steel, which was the lead up to this film. This movie stars Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne / Batman, Henry Cavill as Superman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Jeremy Irons as Alfred, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. It has a pretty solid cast, and this movie had a lot of hype going into it. This is the movie that the entire DC movie universe is supposed to build itself off of. To start with, I really enjoyed the casting in this movie. I think most of the roles were casted very well, and I don't think that anyone in this movie gave a bad performance. I want to say that to start with. The script of this film is a weak part, but we can talk about that later. I really enjoyed Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I thought Wonder Woman was honestly one of the most well-done characters in this movie, but we don't get to see a lot of her, which is very disappointing. I also really enjoyed Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I think if we get more screen time of him, he had the same issue as Wonder Woman, not being in the movie as much. I think that he could really stand to contend Michael Caine's wonderful rendition of Alfred in Christopher Nolan's Batman films. And really, those two characters were the two standouts for me. Everyone else I felt did good. I enjoyed Jesse Eisenberg for the most part. He was a little over the top in certain sequences, but I think his character brought an energy to the film that the movie was sort of lacking, which was a sense of fun but a little bit of crazy at the same time. And I also think that Ben Affleck did do a pretty good job as Bruce Wayne and as Batman, even though this movie is titled Batman v Superman, we don't get a lot of Batman in this film. Arguably, my favorite aspect of this entire film is the score by Hans Zimmer. It is very good all the way up to the final battle sequence where it turns into something that I don't enjoy at all, but up till that point it's very like Greek gods and very powerful orchestra music, and I really enjoyed it throughout the whole film up until that very last part. I think that Zack Snyder did a decent job directing this film. He's very good at making aesthetically pleasing movies, and most of this movie is pretty aesthetically pleasing. Along with that, most of the fight sequences are done well. A couple of them definitely stand out as being the better ones throughout the film, because this movie does rely heavily on CGI, which usually works in most superhero films. According to the Marvel Universe, it shouldn't really be an issue, but in this one, for some reason, it was, and I think that there are a lot of issues like that in this film where they have other films to look off of and they decided not to because they felt that they wanted to make something of their own, and it sort of did not work out in that way. Now, in terms of what this movie did wrong, I think the biggest perpetrator of what caused this film to really fall apart and not feel that good is the script. This script has some rough dialogue sequences. I think the two characters that arguably get the best dialogue are Jesse Eisenberg and Jeremy Irons. The two of them have the best lines in the whole film. The script attempts at small moments to be funny, but it never works, and it just kind of comes off as stupid, and it also just sort of sucks the essence of these comic book characters out of them. Some of them feel relatively like they should. I think Wonder Woman is the best example of that. She feels like Wonder Woman, but I think the big part of that is because the script didn't have enough time to sort of suck away anything that made her Wonder Woman, like with Batman and Superman it does. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything in this review, but this movie just takes these characters that are beloved by so many people, and it changes such strong morals that they hold. Some of you that are comic book fans know exactly what I'm talking about, probably without me saying it out loud. But there's one specific moral that is so severely broken in this film, and I think it very strongly shows that DC is trying very hard to get into this game without copying anything that Marvel has done, and they're kind of screwing themselves over by doing that, because Marvel has a formula that works, and DC needs to find that formula, but this thing that they decided to create in this movie is not the way that this universe should be going. This movie never even really feels like it tries to draw you in. The first act of this movie is so long and drawn out, it's crazy. It's like they never saw the little chart that says like, beginning of film, rising action, climax, falling action. It's like they never got that because it just kind of like, ooh, something interesting. And it's like that. It never has that steady flow that a movie should have. have, it feels as though you're just supposed to automatically care about these characters. And I'm not saying we need a full Batman backstory. Everybody knows Batman's backstory at this point. He's been on screen like 8 times. But what I'm saying is, you still have to build this Bruce Wayne and this Batman for us to care about him in fights. And same with Superman. I personally am not a fan of Man of Steel, but even that movie tried its best to build the character of Superman and of Lois Lane. And this movie throws all that in the garbage. It just says, oh, you know these characters, you know all these characters, you've seen them in other movies, screw it, you know who they are, we'll just move forward with the story. So we get all this exposition and very little about the characters, and because of that, a lot of characters get left behind, specifically Lois Lane. Lois Lane's character is given the dumbest storyline in this film. Her entire part, except for a small part that happens in the film at the end, could have been entirely cut and it would have changed 0 parts of the story. Her character is basically just there to be a damsel in distress, and it's very upsetting because Amy Adams is an amazing talent, and Lois Lane is a character that isn't supposed to be some weak woman. That's the whole point. She's with Superman, but they work because she's strong-willed, and in this film, they give her a strong will, but they don't give her the script or the dialogue or even the scenes to make it come off like she isn't just being a whiner baby. It also feels like throughout the script that we rush through moments that should be held longer. We get very few small dialogue sequences with these characters to get a feel for them. It's like big action sequence, small dialogue scene that's really fast, and then we kind of move on to something else or we go to a different character, because this whole movie is trying to split itself up between 3 or 4 different characters, and it really beats down on the movie after a while. This movie also carries itself in such a dark and dreary manner that in the end, since we never got any real build-up of who these characters are, there's no payoff for that darkness. There's no payoff for the dreary and dread feeling that you have throughout this film. The whole time you're watching it, you do feel like this isn't right, and it isn't right because the script has created these characters that you don't care about, even though you know you should, and that's why it feels dreary, because these are characters you know and love, but this script has tore them down to just their most basic aspects, and you're supposed to care about them just based off of name recognition. Also, this movie had a massive budget of an estimated $250 million. It is one of the most expensive movies ever made, but still some of the effects in this film don't look that great. They don't look horrendous, but there's parts where you watch the fight sequence or whatever is going on, and you're just like, that looks really fake, and I feel like that's something you could pretty easily do practically. And I think that that's a big problem with this film, is in the fight sequences that are full of CGI, the CGI is good enough that from a distance it looks okay, but when the fighting actually ensues, specifically one fight scene, I won't say what, it looks very robotic in some sequences, which works partially, but it shouldn't look so robotic that I'm noticing how CGI the fight scene is because of how robotic it feels. The last thing that I want to touch on is the dream sequences. I'm not going to say what happens in the dream sequences, how many there are, anything like that. All I'm going to say is they pulled me right out of this film almost every single time there was one. There were way too many throughout the movie, and every single time one would happen, it really held no weight. It just added another probably almost like 15 minutes of dream sequence to this film that was unnecessary. There's maybe one that I think could stay, and that's it. They add nothing to the film. They don't build characters at all. They don't help. All they're there to do is be like, hey, let's give them some interesting visuals, and that's it. That's flat out. It's just a visual. I walked out of this movie feeling really meh about it. It's not terrible. It tries its hardest to be very good, but there's so many things that are wrong with it that are so integral to a film, and especially to a comic book film like this, that I really don't know who approved the script to allow so many of these things to happen. I'm gonna give Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice a C. If you are a big Batman fan or a big Superman fan, go see this movie. You will enjoy parts of it. There are also parts that you're probably going to hate. But as a whole, this movie is trying very hard to be something that it is not. And I think that that's the biggest issue. It wants to be a dark, dreary, dramatic film, but then also have characters like Superman and Wonder Woman running around and green rocks that weaken Kryptonians, and it doesn't work. You have to mix a little bit of humor, a little bit of lightness. I'm not saying you need as much as Marvel. Dark films do work, but there needs needs to be something there that is much more common ground for everyone, because people that go into this film that have not read comics, that don't know that much about these characters, will automatically feel like they're being left out. This movie will exclude them from enjoying it. And as someone who has read comics and knows these characters, I even feel like they have changed some of these characters so much that it is very hard for even someone who is a comic book reader to relate to them and to enjoy their presence on the screen. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Batman vs Superman, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and I hope to see you guys later.